My college girlfriend cheated on me and hid a double life, and I later found out she was a STR. She was abandoned by all the boys, and she begged on her knees for forgiveness, It was the fall of my junior year in college when I first met Emily. It was one of those crisp autumn days where the leaves were just beginning to turn, and there was a palpable excitement in the air. I was grabbing a coffee between classes at the campus cafe, struggling to stay awake after an all-nighter cramming for a midterm, when she walked. Emily had this infectious laugh and a smile that seemed to light up the entire— I couldn't help but notice her. As luck would have it, we ended up sitting next to each other. We struck up a conversation, and it felt like we had known each other forever. She was studying psychology, fascinated by what made people tick, while I was majoring in history, obsessed with the past and its lessons. We bonded over our mutual love for classic movies and late-night philosophical debates. Before I knew it, we were spending all our time. Those early days were a whirlwind of passion and fun. We had late-night study sessions that often turned into spontaneous road trips to the nearest 24-hour diner. Emily had this adventurous spirit that was contained. One weekend, we decided on a whim to drive to spending the day exploring hidden beaches and the night camping under the stars. For a while, everything seemed perfect. We were young, in love, and felt invincible. But as the months went by, little things started to gnaw. Emily always had her phone on silent. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe she just preferred the peace. She said it was because she didn't want to be disturbed while we were together, which seemed sweet. But then I started to notice that she would often ignore calls, especially from someone named Jennifer. She would glance at the phone, see the name, put it back down without a word. I asked her about it once, and she brushed it off, saying Jennifer was just a friend who tended to be a bit clingy. As time passed, my curiosity grew. Why would she ignore her friend so consistently? Something didn't add up. One day, while she was in the shower, I did something I'm not proud of. I went through her phone. I found several missed calls and messages from Jennifer, all seemingly innocent, but the frequency was what bothered me. I jotted down Jennifer's number, intending to call her later, though I had no clear plan about what I would say. A week later, my curiosity got the better. I found myself alone in my apartment, staring at the number. With a deep breath, I dialed. A man answered. My heart pounded as I asked if he knew Emily. There was a long pause before he responded, "Yeah, she's my girlfriend." "Who's this?" The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I felt sick to my stomach. It turned out Jennifer was not a friend, but a code name Emily used for her other boyfriend, Mark, whom she had never broken up with before coming to college. Mark had no idea about me, and I had no idea about him. Emily had been visiting him under the guise of going home to see her parents on weekends and breaks. It was a gut-wrenching betrayal. The breakup was inevitable. I confronted Emily that evening, and she broke down, admitting everything. She had been living a double life, balancing between me and Mark. Her tears and apologies did little to mend my shattered trust. I was left feeling like a fool, wondering how I had missed all the signs. She moved out that night, and I was left alone in our once cozy apartment, now filled with the echoes of broken promises. Adding salt to the wound, Emily's mother called me a few days later. She had the audacity to say that sometimes you just have to accept things, and even suggested that I owed Emily an apology for breaking up with her. It was surreal, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. How could she expect me to apologize for being cheated on? One evening, I was out with a few buddies at a local bar, celebrating the end of midterms. We were laughing and drinking, the weight of the past few months starting to lift, even if just a little. Out of nowhere, I received a text from an unknown number. It read, "Hey, it's Emily. Can we talk?" My heart sank. What could she possibly want now? Against my better judgment, I responded, and we agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop the next day. I didn't sleep much that night, my mind racing with a mix of anger and curiosity. When I arrived, she was already there, looking nervous. Emily started to speak, and I could tell she had rehearsed this. She apologized again for everything. She told me about her struggle, how she felt lost and didn't know how to handle her double life. It was all very emotional, and for a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then she dropped a bombshell. She had been a stripper. Felt like the ground was crumbling. Emily explained that there were no strip clubs in Tallahassee, so she worked privately, going to clients' homes. It was a side of her I never imagined. She confessed that she had slept with one of her clients and a fraternity guy during our relationship. Hearing this felt like someone was driving a knife deeper into the wound she had already created. As if that wasn't enough, she told me she cheated on me a week before my birthday, after I'd bought us tickets for a cruise. I didn't find out until months later, but knowing that she had betrayed me so close to a time that was supposed to be special was devastating. Emily also had a strange relationship with her female best friend, Lucy. I'd always been suspicious, given how close they were, but Emily had laughed off my concerns, calling me paranoid. It turns out my instincts were right. She admitted to sleeping with Lucy, and this betrayal added another layer of pain. A week after our coffee shop meeting, Emily invited me over to her new place, saying she wanted to make amends. Against my better judgment, I went. As we talked, I noticed something out of place, a condom wrapper under her bed. She admitted she had slept with her neighbor the first night she moved in. It was another slap in the face, and I realized that no matter what she said, Emily wasn't going to change. To top it all off, Emily had borrowed a significant amount of money from me over the course of our relationship. Money she never paid back. It wasn't just the betrayal, but the financial strain she left me with. It felt like I was carrying the weight of her actions on my shoulders. Years passed, and I did my best to move on. I graduated, got a decent job, and started to rebuild my life. Then, out of the blue, Emily reached out to me again. She had moved to Texas with a new boyfriend who turned out to be abusive. He had beaten her and gotten her evicted from her apartment. Emily's life was still a chaotic mess, and she seemed to be spiraling further out of control. One night, she called me at 4 a.m. desperate and panicked. She'd been hanging out with some shady guys who got pulled over by the cops. They had guns and drugs in the car, and Emily had hidden the drugs inside herself to avoid getting caught. She begged me to come get her. Exhausted and frustrated, I told her to call a cab. It felt like no matter how much time passed, she always dragged me back into her mess. A week later, she contacted me again saying her grandpa wanted to see me. He lived nearby and still remembered me as the boyfriend. I reluctantly agreed to visit, mostly out of respect for her grandpa. When I got there, Emily was clearly high on pills, but no one else seemed to notice. She claimed the guys from the traffic stop felt sorry for her and were giving her free pills. I tried to warn her that nothing in life is, especially not from those kinds of people. She brushed me off, insisting she knew what she was doing. A few days later, the phone rang again. It was Emily, crying hysterically. She was at some budget motel, claiming the guys had drugged her and taken turns with her before leaving her. She had passed out and woke up naked. My first instinct was to tell her to call the police, but she just wanted me to take her to her car. Against my better judgment, I agreed. As I drove, she started screaming and punching the car windows, completely losing it. It was terrifying, and I realized I couldn't keep getting pulled into her chaotic life. The final straw came shortly after. Emily decided to leave town, going back to her abusive ex-boyfriend. She got pregnant, he dumped her, and she moved to New York City to be closer to his other baby mama, hoping he'd be forced to deal with her too. I graduated and landed a job in a city a few hours away, hoping the change of scenery would help me rebuild my life. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into my new role, eager to prove myself and to escape the shadows of my past. The days were long and demanding, but I relished the challenge. My colleagues were friendly, and I started forming new friendships, slowly creating a new support system. The late nights at the office were a far cry from the chaotic nights I spent with Emily, and I welcomed the stability. I found a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Decorating it became a project, a way to make the space feel like home. I avoided anything that reminded me of Emily. No shared photos, no mementos from our time together. It was a fresh start, and I wanted to keep it that way. Despite the progress I was making, dating again was tough. Trust didn't come easily anymore. Every new person I met was subjected to my silent scrutiny, my internal checklist of red flags and warning signs. It wasn't fair to them, but the wounds were still too fresh. I went on a few dates, but nothing seemed to click. Fear of being hurt again loomed large, and I often found excuses to avoid getting too close. One evening, while grabbing a drink at a local bar with some work, I met Sarah. She was sitting at the bar, reading a book, which I found both intriguing and unusual. I struck up a conversation, and we clicked almost immediately. Sarah was different, grounded, genuine, and refreshingly honest. She worked as a journalist, had a passion for travel, and a knack for storytelling that captivated. Our first date was simple. We walked through the park, talking for hours about everything from our favorite books to our most embarrassing moments. It felt natural and unforced. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could trust again. As Sarah and I grew closer, I confided in her about my past. I didn't want any secrets between us. She listened, never judging, and offered support and understanding. It was a stark contrast to the manipulative and chaotic relationship I had endured with Emily. Sarah was a breath of fresh air, a reminder that not everyone was out to deceive. Meanwhile, Emily's sporadic attempts to reach out continued. I would get a message or a call every few months, usually when she was in some kind of trouble. Each time it dredged up old memories and emotions I was trying to leave behind. I ignored most of her attempts, but one day, curiosity got the better of me. Emily called, sounding desperate and frightened. She was in New York, living in a shelter after her abusive ex had kicked her out. She had nowhere to go and no one to turn to. I listened, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. Despite everything she had done, I couldn't bring myself to completely shut her out. I sent her some money to help her get back on her feet, but I made it clear this was the last time. I couldn't keep being her safety net. Emily thanked me and promised to change, but I had heard it all before. I hoped for her sake that she would, but I wasn't holding my breath. Life with Sarah was a stark contrast. We shared many adventures, weekend getaways, hiking trips, and quiet nights in with a movie. Our relationship was built on trust and mutual respect, a foundation I had never experienced with Emily. Sarah helped me see that love didn't have to be tumultuous and it could be simple, steady. One night, after a particularly grueling week at work, Sarah and I decided to have a quiet evening. We cooked dinner together, laughing and talking as we prepared the meal. After dinner, we settled on the couch and she rested her head on my shoulder. In that moment, I realized how far I had come. The shadows of my past no longer loomed as large. I had found peace and stability in a new chapter of my life. Emily's final reach out came a few years later. She sent me a long, rambling email detailing her struggles and asking for forgiveness. She admitted to making countless mistakes and expressed deep regret for how she had treated. She had been in therapy, trying to sort out her life, and wanted to make amends. I read the email several times, reflecting on the journey I had taken since those chaotic. Emily's words felt genuine, and I appreciated her attempt to reach out. I replied, offering her forgiveness, but I also made it clear that we both needed to move on. Our paths had diverged for a reason, and it was time to let go of the past. Looking back, I realized that my experience with Emily had taught me valuable lessons about trust, self-worth, and resilience. It had been a painful chapter, but it had also shaped me into a stronger person. I was grateful for where I had ended up and the love I had found with Sarah.